Good evening and welcome to the October Volunteer Forum. We're coming to you live from the CFA City Office here in Exhibition Street. And I want to start tonight's forum by acknowledging the Aboriginal lands to which we're all meeting on tonight and pay our respects to Aboriginal elders past and present and recognise the strength and resilience of Aboriginal people in this land. Lots to talk about tonight. Have a full panel of distinguished guests. Our Group General Manager for Support Services, Kylie Bates, welcome. Thank you for joining us. Our Chief Information Officer, Brendan O'Kane, thank you for joining us this evening.
Great to be here.
Lots of fun IT stuff to talk about tonight. Nicole Farrell, our General Manager for Health and Safety, making sure we're all safe and well on the panel, so thank you. And I know you got some very important things to talk about tonight. And of course, yet again, Deputy Chief Officer Gary Cook, our Deputy Chief Officer for Response and Coordination. Welcome, Gary. I know a lot of people like asking questions about operational stuff, and thanks for coming on the panel tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I do need to do a little bit of housekeeping to begin with. I am currently the State Response Controller on duty for Victoria at the moment, and I'll be performing that role up until Thursday morning. So I am on duty, and subsequently there is a lot happening across the state at the moment, not only across the flood affected areas but also some significant storm and flooding and rescue events occurring in outer metropolitan Melbourne, particularly in the Lilydale region at the moment. So whilst I am on the panel at the moment, if I do disappear for any reason or have to get off the panel, Gary was happily volunteer or voluntold, one or the other, to jump in and take over emceeing the panel here this evening. So I just wanted to be quite upfront with everyone about that. So thank you. As usual, tell us where you're watching from. We love to know where our members are tuning in from, and I love to see when people are tuning in from overseas or all across Australia. We've got plenty of people, St Leonard's, in the Ballerine. I see Barangaroo West, Kylie. That rings a bell. Yes, I believe you got your new truck in the last couple of weeks, so I know that's been a long time coming. So I hope you look after it. Our infrastructure team, and I know Danny Jones is on tonight, will be pleased to know that that's now in good hands. Absolutely, well-deserved brigade. Yeah, and they did have that unfortunate incident with their former tanker, and thankfully they were okay as a result. But it's fantastic to see the Barangaroo West guys get their new tanker. And you do use the guys term collectively. I know online we have a heap of CFA executive and senior management online waiting to answer any questions that you might have. So if you do have a question, feel free just to pop it in the chat, and if it'll get picked up. And if we don't answer the question here on the panel this evening, one of the friendly team behind the scenes will pick up the question and try to do their best to answer that for you tonight. So let's be on to it. A lot of things to talk about tonight. We're going to be talking about the floods. A lot happening across the state in respect to flooding at the moment, and many CFA members are out there as we speak, side by side with other emergency services in this state in terms of looking after the communities at the moment. So we're going to talk a bit about the flood operation. And the other side of that is we're going to talk about some of the mental health aspects of that and what it might mean for our people. As I said, Brendan, we're going to talk about IT. And some elements of IT, and more important, I guess, what's coming, what's new. And with that as well, we're going to touch on the radio replacement program tonight. We'll talk a little bit more about that. I know we've had questions asked of previous volunteer forums, and we were through a probity process at that time, so we couldn't talk about too much, but we can talk about it a little bit more tonight, and we're glad to have you along to be able to talk about that. And then we're going to obviously talk about many and varied other things that wherever our panel wants to take us, or you at home, where you want to take us as a result of asking the questions. As I said, lots of flooding across the state at the moment, and I know, Gary, you were State Response Controller not that long ago when the predictions started to come in, and we've had weeks and weeks, in fact months of rain. Catchments absolutely saturated. In fact, the SES have been telling us that for quite some time. Talk us through what it meant to be in the SRC chair and what was happening in the lead up to this emergency event.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. So it all started Tuesday, fortnight ago actually, and in State Response Controller with a pretty dynamic forecast, but what was clear, there was a lot of rain coming. So we knew that, but you know, Mother Nature has a way of sorting those things out eventually, but where it was going to land was sort of pretty dynamic. So we ended up with incident control centres set up in effectively every region in the state. So we had Ballarat, Horsham, down around Bairnsdale in the east, a number up along the north, and including Bendigo and Shepparton, which ended up being perhaps the pivot points as we determined where the rain actually landed and then the subsequent consequence. So Tuesday was a huge planning day, and then really Wednesday was a bit of a hiatus in the middle there, because we just had to sit and wait then for that system to come through and deliver what it was going to deliver. So really quite an interesting big day Tuesday planning, a big day waiting almost Wednesday, and then of course the rain hit and we had the impacts at Seymour, and then further down the Goulburn system, but of course Benalla, Wangaratta up in the northeast. Wodonga was stood up. Fortunately, the rain didn't land in the upper northeast, but as you said, everything is just really super wet out there at the moment, and it doesn't take much rain at all now to trigger the rises in the streams. Absolutely, and I see we have online here, and a big shout out to Simon O'Callaghan and the crew from Echuca, because some of them are having a bit of a well-earned rest at the moment, have chosen to dial in tonight to watch this. So look, a big shout out to the Echuca Brigade. I know you're not the only brigade out there doing stuff at the moment, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the impacts on CFA brigades, but I did want to have a bit of a shout out. Speaking of Echuca, our roving reporters got out and about earlier in the week to actually go and see for themselves some of the operations that were occurring and some of the flood impacts on our communities, and stop and take a second to speak to some of our members and get from them their insights on what's been occurring during this flood emergency. So let's hear what they had to say.
Alex Green, First Lieutenant, Echuca Fire Brigade. We've had a little bit of moisture come from various places around town, so we have had the floods that came through Rochester up the Campaspe and then came in last weekend. So they came through the centre of town, so we madly sandbagged beforehand. We had an expected river height of 95.65 and we ended up at 96.25, so 600 mil over the prediction, so we had a little bit of a fight there. We were in there fighting, monitoring the levels, pumping out water as we went, and the water came behind and beat us for a little while. There were a few tears shed. But we managed to get back in there with a strike team of heavy pumpers, pump out all the water, and we managed to save houses. We've had multiple strike teams come up in heavy tankers, medium tankers. We've even got an FCV strike team up here at the moment. This could be an issue for anywhere up to 5 weeks, so it's going to be a constant battle. We've called for pumps from all over the state. We're putting them in strategic places around town, and we're also putting strategic caches of sandbags. So if we do have a blowout or anything else, we can try and fix it, pump it out, and move on to the next one. Just the community have been absolutely astounding. They've come out in spades and delivered. Every time I put up a Facebook post asking for help to sandbag something, they're there. We've got half the town's evacuated, the other half are helping us. So it's just been amazing.
So Luke Waterson's my name. My rank is Acting Commander for Fire Rescue Victoria in the built environment. My role at this incident is Sector Commander for the Echuca sector. So the resources that we have here at the moment, this is a multi-agency event. We've got SES, we've got CFA, we've got Fire Rescue Victoria, we've got Life Saving, we've got Mines Rescue from Fosterville. I'm going to miss someone here, Keith, but we've got nearly everybody with a badge on their shoulders. I just noticed some New South Wales fisheries or Victorian fisheries come walking through the fire station. Yeah, if you're wearing a badge for the state of Victoria, they've probably been in Echuca at some stage. ADF have been a massive presence here. Victoria Police has been a massive presence as well. Originally, when we first knew of this water event coming along the Murray River, coinciding with the Campaspe River water event and also the forecasted rain, we were given a tight timeline of Wednesday afternoon for the high water mark, which meant that we had to act and act fast. And when I say act fast, we've been able to build a 2.5 kilometre long mineral earth levee with excavators and bulldozers and dump trucks in 48 hours. At the same time, we've been able to build probably the same distance, if not greater, sandbag levee along the Campaspe, throughout residential Echuca and out in the east of Echuca around the floodplains to the east. Yeah, so I'm being massively supported by the Incident Control Centre in Bendigo, led by the Incident Control team. Mark Cattell and Les Veering, Greg Murphy are some of the incident controllers that have been in that incident control team and have supported me greatly with the advice from our flood planners and all our stakeholders. They've given us the support to mitigate the risks, to learn from the lessons of other towns that weren't as lucky as us. But when we put in the request and when the information from our stakeholders was known, the challenges and the risks that are associated with this high water level and the impending rain coming through, strike teams have been able to assemble from nearly all over Victoria, which has been really, really impressive, given the fact that some of these strike teams have come from places that have had their own weather events and have had to pick up and move on straight away again. So it's been really good.
Hello, my name's Shane Addison. I'm from Scoresby Fire Brigade, and in the background here we've got Scoresby Hose Load. We were called up to Echuca yesterday to help with the emergency flood relief and to work with local CFA and SES crews in trying to mitigate that flood risk. Our whole purpose here is to provide the hose, and we've got 2.3 kilometres of 100mm hose on board, and work with FRV pumper strike teams. And if the water does breach or we have rainfall inside the safe area, we can pump it back out into the river. So that is essentially our task, and we've been doing some pumping today, and we've moved already about 1 megalitre or 1 million litres of water just to make sure we can move it. And the hose load will be here until Tuesday next week or longer if required. All I can say is if you're at a job and you're thinking about how we're going to move that water and do we need bigger hose, make that call into Firecom and request the resource. We normally travel right throughout Victoria, but it's the only hose layer that CFA has, and we'd like to see it utilised a lot more because we know the value that it can add.
Yes, I'm Peter Leach, a volunteer from the Wangaratta Fire Brigade and currently one of the team members and team leaders of the Wangaratta Mobile Command Van. So we've been, for the last 3 days, we've been working out of Shepparton with the floods with the strike team. Then we've been redeployed today up to Rochester to assist with strike teams working in this area. We're doing radio communications and logging work that they've been doing, and so they've been doing everything from welfare checks to delivering sandbags, delivering medicines, delivering food. So so we just been coordinating that with all the strike teams.
And it would be remiss of me not to touch on the amount of donations and support we've had from not just local businesses, but businesses indeed throughout the state and Australia. We've had offers of pumps, we've had offers of food, we've had offers of diesel, we've had offers of everything you can think of to help mitigate this risk and to keep our crews going. And it's amazing. It's amazing. We've had 16 3-inch quick fill pumps being donated, which the DMOs are working on right at the moment to make them fit and ready for pumping should we need it, and definitely when we move into the recovery phase.
Could not agree more. What a fantastic effort by the local communities, whether they be the local community members living in the streets affected, in the towns affected, or the surrounds, the emergency service personnel in those areas. Everyone has just dug deep to do the best that they can to protect the communities. Gary, watching the video, what comes to thought?
Oh, look, just exactly that. Like, everybody's got their shoulder to the wheel, and we know that there are resources in other parts of the state that are probably willing to help. Right now, we haven't actually used all of the resources around the state, but undoubtedly, this is a bit of a marathon. It's not a sprint. Absolutely. And there's a fair bit of time before the water in the northern rivers pass through the state border. So I'd suspect, the people have been working really hard now for a couple of weeks, and we will be calling on other resources around the state to, at some stage, perhaps give a chop out.
And I think that's what's I guess sometimes you forget sometimes that this flood event is water not only has fallen in Victoria, but also we've got that massive water in New South Wales yet to make its way through the river systems into the Murray. And we're talking about areas like Swan Hill, even through to Mildura, experiencing this flood event right up to December. So we've got weeks of flood operations ahead of us.
Yeah, so the northern rivers coming down, the Darling, the Murrumbidgee, they're all in major flood, and all that water has to dump its way through the Murray system to get down and through the Coorong. So you've got all the northern rivers in Victoria pushing into the Murray. What was already bulging at the seams coming out of Lake Hume and the top end of the Upper Murray. So there's a massive amount of water got to clear the state, and it will take weeks. In fact, the Bureau's saying clearly for a lot of this water it will be into December before it's actually pushing out, and could even be longer because there's so much water effectively damming up. Basically a damming effect. So
absolutely, and it's, as you say, it's all hands on the wheel, shoulders to the grindstone. How great to see the Scoresby hose layer. Like, that thing gets around everywhere across the state. It's a beautiful piece of equipment. A big shout out to the Knox Group. I know they're very proud of the Scoresby hose layer and all their specialist equipment there, but what a great use of that piece of machinery.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the beauty of having statewide resources that can be called on and used to, not necessarily what the Scoresby Brigade, when they were putting that together and part of that Knox Group strategy of specialist appliances, wouldn't necessarily have been considering it being used in this environment, but what a great thing that it is.
Absolutely. We saw not only that with the MCV out of Wangaratta, but it's not only just CFA. So to be fair, all agencies have contributed, and I know FRV sent a strike team of heavy pumpers up to the flood affected regions as well, because there was a need for large pumps to move a lot of large volume of water. So appreciation goes to Fire Rescue Victoria, and I see Simon in the chat from Echuca there calls it out, says they've been a great help to the guys and girls up at Echuca. So if anyone from FRV's watching, thank you very much for helping us out up there. And as you said, it's going to go for quite a long time, and I do see a lot of resource requests. But it's not just trucks, it's not just ground crews. We've been actually supplying a lot of stuff to the flood operations, and Kylie, out of your group, a lot of your people have been very busy in the flood operation as well.
They have. Certainly our State Logistics Centre have been front and centre of getting things out to the districts that need them and the brigades. So I like a bit of colour and movement and some numbers. So what the State Logistics Centre have told me is we've already supplied about 40,000 bottles of fresh water to those communities, which there's plenty of water, but they might not necessarily have safe drinking water. So, and we've stocked up to make sure we've got plenty of supply that we can continue to do that as needed. Things like insect repellent, gum boots, ration packs, hand sanitizer, PPE, it's all being coordinated by the State Logistics Centre. I think our drivers have already, between them, managing their fatigue, but already done about 2,000 kilometres worth of ferrying our goods backwards and forwards, and making sure that the people on the ground and the volunteers have what they need.
Absolutely. And look, speaking of fatigue, Nicole, how important in a long duration event like this is having an appreciation of fatigue and the effects of fatigue on operations?
Absolutely. So we've been talking about this being a marathon, not a sprint. And so all of those, and I think this particular event has come at a time where a lot of people have been, under the pump in other ways. And so it's that sort of cumulative effect in terms of how we may be feeling. We can only survive on the adrenaline for so long. So just being really mindful of those signs of fatigue.
So talk us through the signs.
Talk us through the signs. So if you feel like you are nodding off, heavy blinking, it sounds obvious, but you're not sleeping, so your mind just keeps churning and churning and churning, so you actually can't turn off. That switching off. Mm-hmm. Some people actually become really quite heightened when they're not normally heightened, or can have the opposite effect.
So what are some of the things that I guess our people can do? And I know there are many of our members and community members in these areas right now that are affected, and their livelihoods are at stake. Their families are at stake. So there's a drive to want to protect themselves, their family, their property. So not diminishing that in any way, shape or form, because that's absolutely important. What are some of the things that, some of the practical things that we can be doing to manage our fatigue?
So I think one of the first things is, and again, this is going to sound strange, but actually talk to someone. So don't sort of feel like you, need to kind of hold in what you're feeling or experiencing at a time. It doesn't need to be tapping into the Wellbeing support line, although I do recommend that, and I'll talk a bit about that later.
There's the plug, ladies and gentlemen.
There's the plug, but we all have one or two people that we trust and you can lean on. So absolutely have those conversations. Where you can, do what you can to actually prioritise sleep. I know that can be quite difficult in this sort of circumstance where sleep is probably the last thing on your mind, particularly when you're thinking about your own property and those of loved ones or your neighbours. Making sure that you are staying hydrated, eating well as much as you possibly can. Not like me, I had some fries before, probably wasn't the greatest thing to have for dinner tonight. But all those, I guess, getting back to basics, getting back to your core needs.
So resting when you can.
Resting when you can.
Yeah, having a good meal. Is there anything with that meal, like carbohydrates, those sort of things, or is there anything in particular that you would recommend?
Staying away from anything that's going to give you a very high sugar high. Staying away from too much coffee, because those are the sorts of things that you then experience an extreme kind of dip in your energy levels. Although we all love our coffee, but just being mindful of those sorts of things, because that can interrupt your sleep as well and your rest patterns.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit more about, I guess, health and wellbeing in a second. But just to finish off with your area, Kylie, is we spoke about the SLC doing a fantastic job, resupply, doing great work to make sure that our districts and brigades get what they need. I've sung their praises before. The DMOs.
I know what you're going to say, Jason. It's those DMOs, and I saw a shout out earlier for Danny's team, and certainly our DMOs are front and centre. Many of them themselves are in those affected communities, so they're first to get in and look at what we need to do to get our appliances back to working order. So they are assisting in decontamination, recovery of vehicles. I think the other thing that's been impressive that we've seen is where brigades have lost vehicles, either temporarily or permanently at the moment, other brigades have really stepped up to work with our fleet team to supply and do some temporary swaps around. And I think that really speaks to the integral role our fleet team and the DMOs play in that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot happening across the state. As I said, a lot of people on the ground doing what they need to do in support of the operation and involved in the operation themselves. But there is a human element to this, and for many of our members that may not know, a lot of our members, and I mean a lot of our members, are actually being personally affected by this flood emergency whilst they were out helping others. Yeah, and as a bit of an example, it's been reported to me that the members of the Rochester Brigade, 43 out of the 48 members, had their houses inundated, water over the floors, whilst they were out helping other members of that community. And that just goes to show the dedication of our members. And it wasn't just Rochester, there are other brigades across the state that are dealing with the exact same thing. We've seen photos of Marupna. We've seen photos of, I'm going to say it wrong, I've been saying it wrong all week, but Wirat, right? Thank you. Where we saw the replacement vehicle given to them by another brigade. So many people have been affected, and that's why it is so important that we do talk about this next subject. But before I do, again, we had our roving reporters in the field to speak to our peer team to understand what they've been doing during this flood emergency.
Gloria Turner.
Vella Leonard.
We're peers with CFA, based here now at the moment in Echuca. It's always difficult when you move into an area where there's a fire or flood to embed yourself into, the operations. So that was our first aim, and we're working now with our crews and right across the agencies.
Our role up here at the moment is that basically we're just going around and checking on the crews that are out there. So even just calling on our trucks, that are pumping water and just making sure that they're, got food and water. We've had to ferry the girls into the toilets, because there's nothing out there for them to go to.
That's right, and also behind every person there's a story. So when you're under pressure, often those stories or those activities in your private life come to the surface and cause trauma or difficulties in delivering and being up here under this emotional stress that they are.
And even the other agencies, the guys are coming up to us and just chatting and talking about what they're seeing out there, so which is really good.
Yeah.
And we've even had some of the community talking with us. So, we've spotted a few that are probably near tears, or so we've gone up and spoken to them and just reassured them and let them know that we're here.
And our swift water crews that were going in and finding people in homes in difficult situations, of course it affects them emotionally. It's sad. There's a lot of sadness, as there always is. But we're happy to be here and to be able to allow them to speak and see what we can do. We might be here, but behind us is a really strong team of peers. So if we're getting phone calls about different issues, we can ask that team to follow up so that we can't do it all. But CFA has a 1-800 helpline, and we suggest to all CFA members to call and use that service because it's valuable. They can access us, they can access all the different services they need, and so, take care of yourself. Gloria Chern.
1800 959 232 is the line that you call, and a big shout out to our peers that are doing an amazing job out across the flood affected areas. Look, we all want to be Superman, or Superwoman, but we are but mortals, Nicole. We saw the video. The health and wellbeing, psychological health and wellbeing, and the peer group sit within your portfolio.
I do.
What are some of your thoughts?
So I guess just picking up something that Gary said earlier around this being a really sort of dynamic situation, and that there are there can be many unknowns. But what we do know is that in the immediate aftermath of a natural disaster, many people will experience intense reactions. But for most people, these reactions will decline over time. And these intense reactions are a normal response to an abnormal event. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. So you will have heard our peers, Gloria and Vella, just then talk about some of those responses and some of those reactions that are normal feelings. So they referred to sadness. There's also can be loss and grief and a feeling of helplessness, and probably at the moment, depending on where you are in the state, it can be just sheer survival mode.
Absolutely.
So our peers really are, I guess, skilled at understanding what sort of support the person may need at the particular time, because that can change.
Awesome. And the real important thing to I guess, to understand, and keen for your thoughts, Gary and Kylie, is it's about supplying the support now, today, because our people are seeing some pretty challenging things into the field. But it's not just today, it's next week, it's next month, it's 6 months down the track when the floodwaters are gone, but some of those feelings continue to exist. And Gary, I know that was the case for many of our members following the 1925 season, and in fact 09, Black Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why it's important to manage this as a continuum. Really, don't wait until it's too late. It's never too early to have these conversations, and our peers out there do just the best work. And I think back to that 1920 season in particular, we put peers on aeroplanes and took them with strike teams into New South Wales, and then we brought that down and ran them right throughout the summer. They did a phenomenal amount of work, and so many of our members out on the ground were just absolutely stoked at the support they got from our peers, but it has to then continue on. So it's about the first steps, but then it's about actually, and different people need different support. As Nicole's indicated before, not everybody's going to react the same way around this, but it's important that we actually support our people, and it's not too early to seek support. It's never too early.
Absolutely. And Kylie, there are peers in the field. We have a great peer program, but there is so much more available to our members and their family.
Absolutely. So the member wellbeing, the member assistance program, you can gain access and, urgent support through that. But there are programs through the member assistance where your family can get assistance. There's financial advice that members can access. So they're often really important supports for members further down the track. And I think it's really important, just picking up on what Gary said, you never know where people are at. So right now, people can be coping, can be working through, but when they're back in their brigade, a few months down the track, or back in the workplace at headquarters, there can be other things playing out for people. So I think it's important as leaders, and BMTs are leaders as well out there as part of our leadership cohort, to be asking those questions regularly.
Absolutely. It's just it's so important that we make sure that those services are available to our members. As an executive members, that's at the forefront of our minds, ensuring that we do the right thing and we service the community and we help our community. But it's about that safety first, and that physical safety, but also the psychological safety of our members as they're out there doing what they do best, which is protecting our communities. So Brendan, I know you've sort of been sitting there rather quiet thinking, I've got away with dealing with any of this flood sort of stuff. But you were dragged into it as well the other day. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, well, we had an outage up in Mildura with Telstra had a network outage. So kicked in our business continuity plan and with both the people in the comms team, but also people up in District 18, and it worked as planned. So that was good. We got everybody connected. They knew what was going on, communicated to. So It was good to be able to test it with everything going right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a lot of people don't realise that the CFA, whilst we talk about operations and that sort of stuff, but the CFA, all of CFA, is all about operations. Whether it be the ICT technicians, back at Burwood or out in the field doing that, whether it be the peers on the front line, whether it be the people in payroll making sure that, or the people paying the accounts to make sure that we have the gumboots available for the SLC to distribute. But also, and I did touch on there earlier, and I know Kylie again to your area. CFA infrastructure has been affected, quite a lot of CFA infrastructure. So our land and buildings team are going to be out there having to do what they
are. They'll be pretty busy. I think we've got about 13 fire stations that have been impacted some way or another. 3 which have had pretty significant and major damage that will take quite a while to remediate and potentially have some challenges for operations. So getting that intel from the ground, our APOs out in the field are working closely with land and buildings. So really critical role so that we minimise the impact to operations over the longer term.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter if you wear a uniform or not in CFA, you're all part of the team that makes it happen. So, and a big thanks goes out to everyone for your contributions and what you've done. So, question time, and Gary, one for you and your thoughts, and one from Michael. Looking at recovery, there's rumours that Parks Victoria will not be able to reopen their parks along the flood-affected rivers for up to 1 year due to hazardous trees. We know that some people will disobey the closures and will still go camping and have campfires escape. What will CFA's policy about entering areas that Parks Vic has closed due to hazardous trees?
I think the first thing is not sure whether they'll be closed or not, and the hazardous trees issue is something that we know happens whether we're dealing with fires or whether we're dealing with floods. So I guess we've got our members trained, but the first thing is if there are people that are actually going into those parks and they're closed, then obviously there's other mechanisms there in terms of Parks Victoria and their ability to prosecute. But safety is paramount. So anything that our firefighters are doing, if there are hazardous trees in that area, then we would expect that people actually either assess that appropriately and not enter, or find an alternate way to come in. The other bit is that we will still have aviation resources. So we'll have our heli-tax and things like that available this summer. And if that's what's required to put a campfire out that shouldn't be there, then the incident controller can request that. So if it hasn't come under the PDD activation, then you can still request it. So I guess from our perspective, we would look to put, as we always do, safety first, and then deal with that accordingly. But I haven't actually heard that at this stage. It's probably a little bit early or premature to be actually determining whether that is actually going to occur. But one thing's for sure, there will be some level of destabilisation of trees given the amount of inundation that's occurred.
Absolutely. And all the more reason why we do that tree hazard awareness, really, isn't it?
Look, it is. I mean, we unfortunately know from our experiences that trees take more lives in firefighting, and certainly in the last 10 years that's been the case, than anything else. So we just need to heed those warnings, and whether it's the trees being impacted because of fire or whether they've been impacted because of flood or wind or all of those other elements, we just need to be really aware of the dangers of trees.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's go talking about the elephant in the room, and lots of comments in the chat. Nicole, we saw some changes to the pandemic arrangements in Victoria. Can you talk us through what happened recently with the pandemic orders?
Yes, so the pandemic orders ended on the 12th of October, 11:59 p.m. on the 12th of October, which essentially means that there are no pandemic orders in place other than some requirements still in the health sector and also in the aged care sector as well. So really looking at what that means for us in terms of that.
And each of the secretaries of the departments have been given the job of coming up with a departmental secretary policy.
That's correct.
That applies to each of it. So for CFA, as part of the Department of Justice and Community Safety, we're part of that and contributing to that. So we did give our commitment post the ending of the pandemic order to consult with our volunteers and understand. And as you correctly alluded to, one of our biggest challenges at the moment is just to quite understand what those secretary orders mean for the health industry. So just so we can appreciate a brigade responding to a hospital for an AFA or a brigade conducting FEM business in a healthcare setting, what some of those requirements might be. So we've asked those questions. We're hoping to get that response back from them very soon, and we'll be able to put together a position to be able to go to our membership and ask them for their views. In the meantime, Standing Order 17 on COVID vaccinations and the pandemic order is still the case. Now, there are, just for clarity, I guess, there are some exemptions that we did put into Standing Order 17 following the last change to the pandemic order. Do you want to step us through some of those exemptions?
Sure. So the exceptional circumstances relate to turning out for an emergency that is qualified by being authorised by your captain to do so. The second exceptional circumstance relates to attendance at critical training, whereby you are still required to have 2 doses, again with authorisation of your captain, and there are certain categories that are deemed critical training.
Absolutely. So if you are in doubt about what the current rules are, please speak to your district office. But Standing Order 17 will remain in place until we consult with our volunteers, and that includes the VFBV to come to a new position. So we're hoping to be able to come out and talk about that very, very soon, as I said, once we get some of those other advices. In respect to our staff, that will be communicated through a separate process. I know the staff have already been involved in a consultation process for our policy. So that's where we are at the moment. I know for some it's probably not what you want to hear. For others, you're probably laxed with it. But yeah, it is important that we address it. I know there's a lot of comments in the chat, so I wanted to make sure we didn't finish tonight without addressing that situation. So thank you to those people in the chat that raised it. Brendan, before we talk about all things that go pop, whiz and bang in the IT space, when are we going to get some tablets mounted in our trucks?
Yep, that's on the way. Early in the new year, the mobility project's underway and it's progressing well. So the plan is that we'll do a proof of concept for about 30 vehicles in the first quarter of next year and fine-tune things as we go through that, and then start rolling out to the rest of the fleet as we move through 2023, 2024. There'll be a number of applications on it. One of the key themes in ICT, and you talked about making everything's about supporting the operations. One of the key themes is really making it easy for the brigades and the volunteers. So, we'll put a number of applications on the tablets, FIRS online and soon to be FIRS mobile, SAS, hazmat, road crash rescue, MCOP. We'll have weather, we'll have mapping and pre-plans all delivered through the tablet. We have, one of the key things we want to put there is integration with the CAD, with Esther. So we're working with Esther on that. They've got a few things they've got to sort out on their side, and we're working closely with them to make that happen. So the mobility project's one of the big ones. We've got a lot of other things, just trying to make it easier for the brigades and the volunteers. getting rid of the paperwork, automating some of the processes. We've done that with the volunteer recruitment hub, FERS I mentioned, looking at apps and the pocketbook app so that people have got everything on the Fireground with them that they need to
Absolutely, and many of our members might remember that first responder guide, Gary, that CFA and NFB put together there. So I would love to see that digitised. And again, having it in the palm of your hand, no matter where you are, it doesn't really matter whether you're in phone reception or not. Being able to call up that critical information and be able to help our people on the Fireground. So Brendan, as the CIO, one question for you. So what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, cybersecurity is probably the key thing, and the criminals are progressing very quickly. The technology is changing all the time, so we have to be on top of it. So we're doing a number of things in the cybersecurity space. We've already made some good improvements. We've appointed a cybersecurity manager to help drive that. We're also investing in tools and getting some good partners to help us with that, and that will roll through to volunteer population as well, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. So we're giving all our members access to a lot of the systems, but with that access we need to make sure we've got security there as well. And people will be well aware of some of the big breaches that are hitting the press at the moment, but there's a lot happening that isn't hitting the media, and we do a lot of testing to find out what our vulnerabilities are and fix them as quickly as we can. We have a lot of equipment that we need to update to close off some of those issues, and we're addressing that as we go forward.
Yeah. So Rodney asks, talking all things IT, we've had a number of hacks with major businesses recently, as you said there before. How confident can we be that our personal information is fully secured?
Reasonably confident, and we're doing things to increase that confidence. We don't hold a lot of personal information. We hold a lot of the member information, their names, addresses and contact details, driver's licences for some of them. We don't hold a lot of other banking details or that sort of stuff. So hopefully that diminishes us from being a target, but anything with a .gov on the email address is potentially
pretty much a target, really, isn't it, for those hackers? And I know you report regularly to the executive and the board around where we are in terms of our cyber security. And I think for myself, I'm glad to see that compared to where we sit with other government entities, with broader industry, we actually rate quite well. Can always do more, and we should always be doing more because this is evolving all the time. But we're actually, sitting quite well in terms of our security score, if that's what you call it, for what we have currently, don't we? Yeah,
we do, and we need to be careful. And I think everybody's, I put out some communications recently because quite often it's just, people opening up an email, clicking on a link in an email, or answering a phone call. Like we've had attempts to get into our systems by people ringing members or ringing staff and saying, I'm from Microsoft, you've got a security issue, I need to fix it. And that was a scammer. So we just need to be really careful. So education's a key thing, tools is a key thing. But while we're reasonably confident that everything is safe, we've also got to prepare if things go wrong. So we're working on our responses and making sure we can react quickly, and we've got assistance in reacting quickly and getting things closed down and sorted out. So the alerting, the monitoring, we're improving all that as well.
Because there's a lot, I guess there is a lot to be mindful of in this space, and a lot of terms that I guess used in the ICT space. And one that comes to my mind is phishing, and I'm not talking about throwing a line off the back of a boat with an esky full of tinnies. So what is phishing?
Phishing is when people send emails or there might be text messages and there'll be a link, and they'll just say, press this link to fix up a security problem, or press this link to check your account. Your PayPal account's been hit with a $200 charge. If you disagree, hit this link. Oh, I better get that quickly. So and we'll do some testing on phishing. There's what they call friendly phishing. So we need to sort of make sure, again, gets back to the education so that people are aware of what could be a scam and to take extra precautions.
So when you go friendly fishing and you catch a tiddler, do you throw it back?
Yeah.
Excellent. And what about whaling?
Well, hopefully we don't catch any whales.
But that is actually a term, isn't it, in the IT space?
And vishing.
And vishing.
Vishing.
Yeah, a lot of. If members do want to know more about cybersecurity and what you can do to protect yourself, your brigade, there's a lot of information available on members online, but also there's a cybersecurity training package on LMS that people can do, can't they?
Yeah, and we will be increasing the training on LMS in the cybersecurity space as well. That's one of the things we're beefing up.
I guess the most powerful thing or a piece of advice that we can give someone, if it looks dodgy, smells dodgy, or even looks a bit whatever, just don't click.
Yeah.
Just delete is probably the thing to do with it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. So other things happening in the ICT space, and one I know that our members are quite interested in, and we have talked about it more recently, is our radio replacement program. And we've had questions before to the panel about when are we getting our new radios and what does it all mean? We took some time out to speak to ACFO Jason Lawrence, who's our Manager of Operational Communications, to talk about the radio replacement program and what it will mean for our members.
Thanks, Chief. Good to finally be able to talk about the radio replacement program occurring in CFA at the moment. My name's Jason Lawrence, Assistant Chief Fire Officer, CFA Operational Communications, and with me I've got Will and Shane from the radio replacement program. What we're going to talk a little bit about this evening is the radio replacement program occurring across CFA at the moment. So we're finally in a position to progress replacement of CFA's entire fleet of operational radios. We've had the current Tate radios for in excess of 12 years now, and a number of years ago we put a case to government to fund the replacement of CFA's radio fleet. We're progressing that at the moment, and we're finally in a position where we can do a bit of a demonstration for some of the products that we've selected and provide a bit of direction as to where the project's at. And part of that will be starting to engage with our personnel in the field about what that radio replacement program looks like. So,
thank you all for your patience. We have had a variety of people being involved in the program. I'd like to call out the URG members. Thank you so much, our user reference group, as far as our volunteers being able to be part of the team to help us through the evaluations. That's now completed, so we've done our lab evaluations, our field evaluations, we've done some hostile environment evaluations as well. So this is why you're able to see the products in front of you. We are now progressing to a pilot with these preferred products. The pilot is going to be starting hopefully in January, and we will then push towards that being done over a variety of brigades. But today just wanted to show you some of the products that we've actually got.
We've got both mobiles and portables available for show today. What we've got here is a range of 3 portables that we're going to take through to the pilot. Each of these portable radios is what we call dual band, UHF and VHF, so that we can actually work with all our partner agencies and interstate agencies as well on any of the networks that we're currently using in Victoria. All radios do have a level of intrinsic safety, which is important to us as a fire service. One radio has a higher top level of intrinsic safety, which will be applicable to some locations. The only other difference between these 3 radios here is the one in the middle has the capability for what we call LTE connection, which uses the cellular mobile phone network in the event that we lose our normal radio coverage on what we know as the RMR network. It can connect through using a cellular connection if that's available to help fill out some of our black spots, particularly in building situations.
So obviously to get to this point we've had to take a fair bit of analysis, a market scan to see what products are out there, and even though that we've got the products in front of us today, it doesn't mean that we haven't tried and tested a whole range of products to get to this point and put some pretty strict criteria in place, Will, I suppose. So would you like to just sort of talk us through some of the challenges and the testing that we've undertaken to get to this point?
The key thing was for us to narrow down our scope. We really had that around core requirements. So it was about our desktop evaluation. Then from there, our lab evaluations, multiple absolute of hours spent in the lab testing all of these products, and then pushing it out to field evaluation. That field evaluation included going through in the vehicle everything that was around operational environments. So wearing it on PPC, ensuring that the product is capable, along with also making sure that all of the communications itself were solid, being received from both user to user, user out to a base, and then back out as well, under environments behind a pumper as an example. So they've definitely been put through the rigour, and we've also got the pilot still ahead of us as well. So looking forward to seeing outcomes from that as well.
Yeah, so obviously some of the testing, including hostile environments, and clearly engaging with all our operational members to make sure they were wearing the appropriate PPC, the radio fitted into that existing and future PPC requirements could be housed appropriately. And as you say, Will, there's probably some appropriate time to talk about some of the technology uplifts.
One of the key benefits a lot of the volunteers will see is the ability of having these dual band radios and multi-band radios that we can talk to other agencies. In the past, we've had to either swap radios with other agencies in order to maintain interoperability and communications on the Fireground, or in some cases we rely verbally because we can't communicate. These radios will be able to have the channels of our partner agencies in them to have seamless interoperability and communications. We also, portable radios will all have GPS capability as well, so we can track the radios themselves for the safety of our members. We have also taken into account the button size, location, our remote speaker mic. This is some work we did with Motorola based on the feedback from our field evaluations to ensure that we had good sized buttons that can be usable when members are wearing our gloves. So all in all, I think we'll see an improvement in our capability on the Fireground. Thanks, Jason. Another great function of these radios is the ability to do voice activation for a number of functions. Channel 542.
542.
Volume 7.
Volume 7.
One of the features of the mobile radio is also strong indication of when you're out of service of the RMR. The radio will give a strong indication if it cannot find a site to indicate you are out of range. We will see the front display change colour as it is now done to indicate you are out of range. This is our handheld control head unit. We have a slightly larger display than our existing Tate radio, but all functionality of the radio is available on the control head, including channel changes, volumes, duress, and we can see our location. Similar to the other control heads, when this radio cannot find a signal, is out of range, we will get audio tones, a large red banner indicating we are out of range from the RMR network.
Very good, thanks Shane. So just to wrap that up a little bit, whilst we do have an offering of a number of different variants of the radio fleet, part of the process that we'll be going forward with from here on in will be to help determine where these might be located and what situations would be most appropriate for them to be used in. So that's part of the work that we're still got to do in the future, and part of what's still going on with this project. But otherwise, it's on track, and hopefully gives you everyone a bit of a snapshot of where we're at with this project, and there'll be more information forthcoming down the future. So back to you, Chief. Thanks, Chief.
Well, thank you to Shane, Jason and Will for that update there on the radio replacement program, Roger Wilco. Brendan, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, listen, I think it'll be a great introduction of some new technology into the field. I think the dual band capability will be fantastic for us. We're still dealing with global supply chain issues, so that will temper the rollout as we go forward, but we're doing as much as we can to streamline that and work with Motorola.
And the beauty of the dual band radio is it won't matter whether our members come into metropolitan Melbourne or operating in regional Victoria. One radio, two radio networks are constantly connected, as opposed to, I know many of our outer Melbourne brigades, particularly with operating and assisting FRB in the MMR footprint, have to carry two radios, Gary.
Yeah, we've been doing that. So in Southern District 2, out in District 8, the team have been right through there in a lot of the interface, putting in MMR portable radios in the last few months, so that as FRV are moving on to the MMR network through the old District 8 integrated or co-located brigade locations. Western District 2 out around Melton, Sunbury also did that last year, and we've got different radios for different purposes. This will actually take us to one radio, multiple purpose, and so as Brendan's indicated there, it's a massive step forward for us, and that's in the interface areas, and then of course it gives us a whole heap of flexibility out in the rest of regional Victoria. So
Absolutely.
Great technology.
Absolutely. And how important is it that we actually do the trial? This is a multi-million-dollar project, so we have to get it right the first time. So how is it important? How important is it that we actually do this trial and understand these radios?
It's a key, and we're trialling it in a lot of different scenarios, and it's great to see Makatar on the list of brigades that'll be trialling it, and trialling in areas so that adjacent brigades are working together and trialling it together. So that'll be fantastic, and hopefully we'll get some good feedback in different areas and be able to roll it out smoothly.
And I think the beauty of going to this new technology, both with integrating with the RMR and MMR networks, and the brand of radios that we get to. Obviously, we're trialling the Motorola's at the moment, but is it opens the door to so many possibilities. And I know where I come from, there was integration of status panels and MDTs in with radio, data over the air, capability, status messaging, AVL, telecommunication interconnectivity, that sort of stuff. So, and that really goes to ensure that we truly are connected brigades, doesn't it?
It does, and also the GPS capability gives us good safety capability in the radios, and also good information, so that we don't have the operators having to sort of send messages. We're getting the data flowing through, and the operators can focus on the Fireground.
Absolutely. And there's Stuart French asked, have the radios been tested in known dead spots like hospitals where currently the FRV radios don't work? That's exactly why we're doing this trial, isn't it? And there's certain technologies, and I know the team spoke about some of it, that works with not only over the radio waves, but also looks to using telemetry towers as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we're trialling it in hospitals, in large buildings, car parks, heavy concrete areas that might interfere with the transmission.
Intrinsically safe, all those sort of things as well, because I know many of our members will use this radio in hostile environments, including explosive environments, so it's quite important.
Yeah, so we know there's a number of major hazard facilities, for example, so and some of those locations where we need intrinsically safe communications devices. So that'll all be part of the package. What we've got to do is get the right package and then have the flexibility within that to meet the needs. So there will be different, there will be potentially different radios for different environments that are purposely designed to suit that particular hazard that people are dealing with. So we don't want to overcomplicate it, but we also want to make sure that we've got the best tools in the hands of our firefighters going forward.
Absolutely. So Nick asks, is there still a program to replace the existing EAS pages? Let's take that one.
Yeah, so there's a EAS pager replacement process underway, and the EAS contract more broadly is currently being reviewed. So the commitment to paging going forward as the primary alert device continues. We've got the supplementary alert system, of course, sitting behind that, but clearly EAS paging and updated and or future devices will continue to be there. So in terms of complete refresh of the EAS paging network, not at the moment, but certainly there is a new wave of pages on the horizon.
Just a quick one on that. This morning's incident with the network outage up in Mildura, the whole mobile and landline networks went down as well. So the pages were a key part of the business continuity plan.
Absolutely. Look, it's great to see. This discussion has triggered a lot of good questions around radios. We've piqued people's interest. So the beauty of, I guess, having these radios is they are programmable, and we will need to put together a channel spec or radio profile, and that will also include cross-agency, cross-jurisdiction radio profiles.
Yep.
There you have it.
Yeah, so just on that, so obviously South Australian border, New South Wales border, a lot of interoperability in those locations, and the ability to make sure that we've got those devices appropriately programmed as well. So yeah, and again, we, from a technology refresh, it's 12, 14 years since the existing radios are out there, the Tate ones. So this will be a big step forward from where we're at today.
Absolutely, and some of the key features, and I know some of the question asked here, will the new radios have Bluetooth capability and some of the add-on, use of the add-on functionalities that it brings, and I understand that a lot of these modern radios do come with simple things like Bluetooth technology now.
Yeah, and they'll come with the technology, and we'll need to look at how we use it, and particularly as we link with the mobile devices and the tablets in the vehicles as well, we'll be looking to maximise that and not let them get in the way of each other.
Yep. So another question here by Tim, and we might have to take this one notice, but you never know. Will CFA use a new configuration, or will we roll out the existing MMR, RMR mapping used on the APX radios? I think he means fleet mapping.
Yeah, look, it's actually a good question. I'll have to take that one on notice, but we'll take that one. I think we'll take that one off, and I'll get some greater clarity on it rather than actually go on the fly on that one. Mm-hmm. My view will be it will be there, but let's just
Well, I guess because fleet mapping, as much as some of us hate it, and I am one of those people that don't like it because I love listening to what's going on when I'm driving around the like. But it is essential because it does stop the system being overloaded with people doing exactly what I've been guilty of doing, which is having that sticky beak as you're driving around the state listening to incidents and the like. So we'll take that one on notice, but I'm sure there'll be some sort of fleet mapping that will ensure that we keep the system up and running and operating at peak performance. Quite a lot of questions about training, and my thanks goes to Deputy Chief Officer Jean Diesel, who's online answering those questions about training. Likewise, shout out to Nikki Habidis, who's taking on some questions and providing feedback in respect to some of the commentary around the Volunteer Recruitment Hub. We know there are some challenges with that, and I think that's part of why we have these consultation sessions, isn't it? So we roll something out, we talk to our members about it, and they give us the feedback about that.
Yeah, and I was up in District 18 last week and got some feedback on that. And it's interesting, different districts, different brigades take to this technology differently. So some find it a great benefit, others like to sort of stay in control of parts of the process. So we're trying to find a common ground. And one of the key things for efficiency is that we don't have a whole swag of different processes for the same objective. So that's one of the things, and sometimes we've got to make compromises on that.
Absolutely. One of the things I would let everyone know, and I know we've been talking about it for a little while, we are going to dedicate an entire volunteer forum to training. I know Jean is absolutely chomping at the bit to make that happen for our members. Quite a lot's been happening for Jean in the training area over the last couple of weeks. We've done our VRQA recertification. They've also been working very hard to transition our training packages to PUA 19. So that's why we've sort of had to put it off a little bit. But I'm looking at the team at the back of the camera, but in the next few, sooner rather than later, we will have a volunteer forum totally dedicated to training, and you can ask, and it'd be great to have Jean and the crew on to ask and talk about training. Again, some really good conversation and chats here in the chat here. So thank you very much for everyone for asking your questions, and as I can see, they've been answered by the team. So I will leave that there for a minute and go to. We do have questions that are emailed through in preparation to the volunteer forum via internal comms at CFA. So I might touch on some of those. Gary. Has there been any discussion about any visual identifiers on helmets or epaulets based on qualifications, rather than the current system where we vote in our offices at times are not qualified, perhaps some sort of Fireground ranking system?
Yeah, so I guess there's probably two parts to that, because we currently have a ranking system on the Fireground, which is helmet identification and things like that. So, but the point I think that's raised there is what that's linked to. So, at the moment we elect our office bearers through the biennial election process. But just for example, where there's a trial going on in District 15 at the moment with BA for internal or external use. So that's been underway now for a few months, and we'll get the feedback. ACFO Brett Boatman's coordinating that with District 15, and undoubtedly we'll hear about that. So yes, I think the short answer is there's some things underway. Is there room for us to do more in that space, Chief? I think there is.
Absolutely, I do think there is, and we many of the fire services across Australia have a ranking system, and CFA, as you say, has that colour helmet colouring system. But I think it's a great question. I think it's something that's really worth consideration and discussion. I'm really keen to hear the thoughts and feelings of our members on perhaps a Fireground ranking system and a pre-qualification system as well, that allows us to visually identify those people that have the skills and capabilities to perform on the Fireground. And perhaps, Kylie, and I know linking things in for the culture review, perhaps one day looking at pre-qualification to hold officership. So whilst we're not necessarily getting rid of the election process, it's about ensuring people meet a minimum benchmark to hold a position.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly we know in brigade management teams they're important leadership roles, and leadership requires training and skill development. So we are certainly looking at through the practical things that we can do around volunteer leadership for development and rolling out that program, but certainly consideration that some of the feedback that came through in the culture review is about how what are those minimum qualifications to be able to stand for election. So that will be important to consult.
Some really great discussion to be had with our members on that, and as always, really keen to hear your thoughts and feelings. We are about making sure we do the right thing for our members, and that's about also making sure that we're getting the collective view. Another question here, what is the latest on the Fireground Commissioner's review of FRV boundaries? There are rumours of new FRV stations about to be built in current CFA response areas, and CFA stations areas having limited maintenance on them or being low on the replacement list, leaving members in substandard conditions. So look, I, without knowing the specific area to which you're referring to there, what I can and what I do know about is part of the reform process, there are a number of CFA stations or integrated stations that were about to be built. I think Gary, Clyde North, for example, was one of them, that will see FRV build a fire station for their career firefighters and an area transition across. That was agreed pre-reform, so I envision those will continue. I think Armstrong's Creek comes to mind as well. So outside of those two that we were very much aware of as part of the reform process, I'm not aware of anything. And as many people would know, the Fire Boundary Review Panel formed part of the government as a result of fire services reform, is in charge of actually looking at the fire risks and making recommendation to myself as Chief Officer about whether a change in jurisdiction should occur, and allowing CFA to provide a response to that for the consideration of the Minister. So the Fire Boundary Review Panel has just recently released their methodology, and you can go onto the Fire Services Implementation page through the vic.gov website, and the Fire Boundary Review Panel page, where you'll be able to download and read the methodology that has been landed on by the Fire Boundary Review Panel. And I'm sure we'll be talking much more about this in the sessions to come. And keep those questions rolling in. Thank you, Jean, for continuing to answer most of those questions, considering they're training based. The next one is probably one for you, Gary, because it sits in that specialist response portfolio, has CFA considered rolling out oxygen resus equipment to urban brigades, especially where those brigades have already purchased defibs ahead of the recent CFA rollout?
Yeah, probably not specifically to urban brigades, but if I go to, I think it was the July forum, we talked about fire medical response and our partnership with Ambulance Victoria there. We'll roll out to 50 brigades around the state. Now, there will be a number of those brigades, I'd suggest, will be urban brigades or brigades in that larger sort of town or community setting. So that's the target at the moment. It's not necessarily specifically O2 to those, all of the urban brigades, for example, that have got defibs. It'll be targeted to the 50 that will be as part of that fire medical response program. So that's where we're at the moment. That's what we've got the funding to do. In terms of future state beyond that, let's get FMR on the ground and get that functioning and see how successful that is.
I think for me, what is a great takeout is just the want and thirst of our members to want to do more in that space and help their communities. And I'm really buoyed by, I guess, seeing that. It's not for everyone. And we're not forcing it on brigades that don't want to do that, including FMR. Like it is an opt-in, opt-out program, but I just love how our members really want to get in and help our communities. I wouldn't let an opportunity like this go past, Kylie, because you've been sitting on the end there and contributing to discussion. But where are we at with, and I think we touched on it before, around culture. So where are we at with the ZOC review and the implementation of the cultural review?
Excellent question, Jason. So we've been working with a project control group comprised of senior representatives from across CFA to be looking at what are some of the things that we are doing that we need to accelerate and actually be communicating to members, and also what are the new things that we need to be doing and sequencing some of those. So there's certainly, I know, an area of strong interest from members is always around our issues, how we resolve issues. So there is some work going on in our complaints area, and one of the critical things we want to be able to report on to members in the new year is around outcomes of complaints. Obviously anonymous and de-identified, but we know that's been something that our members have said. So I'm expecting that probably by the end of the month we'll be in a position to communicate where that plan is up to.
Absolutely, and because there's been a power of work done by our districts, by our regions, our
Absolutely.
HRBPs and our complaints team and the like to clear the backlog of legacy complaints. They are really working hard, and there's all but a handful left, I understand.
Yes, and much more work being done to resolve issues locally. And what we've really seen is the really strong take-up of the behavioural standards sessions. So I think we're at about 1,800 members across the state have participated in that. And we're actually finding brigades saying, actually, can you put us at the front of the queue? We really think this is important, and we're hearing those values reflected. And I think it's really important we promote the positive.
1,800 members, like it only was released not that long ago. That's a fantastic uptake. And as you say, I'm even hearing it when I travel the state of volunteer members wanting to know more and how they can get access to behavioural standards training, because it's really practical, isn't it? Scenario-based training.
It's very scenario-based, and to the extent that we've been able to, the team have a load of scenarios that are really applicable.
Mm-hmm.
So, depending on the nature of the brigade and where it's located and some of the issues. So I think it's something that members have been surprised at how readily they can engage in it.
Absolutely. Now, child safety also fits within your portfolio. What's so interesting about
It's Children's Week.
It's Children's Week.
So Children's Week is about celebrating the achievements and rights of children. And the theme for this year is about health and wellbeing of children and their development. So that's something that is really important to CFA. We know that child safety is more than just a police check or a working with children check. They're important, but it's actually what we do to look at the physical environment children operating in and the safe environment. If I bring it back to floods, children are members of the communities that are affected. Their parents are out there assisting with the floods, and we need to be thinking about the physical safety of those children, but also the long-term psychological safety of the children, and there are supports through member assist that can help.
Absolutely, and young members are the future of the CFA. They're in our junior brigades. They are the future men and women of the CFA. They are the future leaders. They will be the future chief officers into the future. So we do need to do everything we can to foster and encourage our youth in CFA. And a big shout out to all the members on the Young Advisory Committee. I know you've been doing some really great work, and a good congratulations to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're getting very close to that time where the team behind the camera gesticulate wildly at their watch and show me that you've gone over time yet again. So I should probably start to try and wrap it up. But Kylie, final thoughts?
Look, just thank you to all of the members out there, and also to acknowledge all of our employees who are many are out there volunteering, staffing ICCs, or as we spoke about, doing some critical things. It really is a whole of CFA effort. So just a big shout out to all the members.
Brendan.
Yeah, again, a thank you to all the members that are helping us with our key projects, the radio replacement project, the mobility project. We've got a lot of people helping us and giving us feedback on LMS and a number of the other systems that we run. So, we need them for the testing to make sure that things are working as intended.
Absolutely. Gary, your thoughts?
Oh, look, one thing I didn't mention before was a bit of a shout out to a small group of people who have made themselves available from CFA Road Crash Rescue.
Absolutely.
And SES and the Shepparton Search and Rescue Squad, who have actually formed up a aerial insertion crew for road crash rescue in northern Victoria, based out of Mangalore. Daylight hours only, and they're moving up to Bendigo tomorrow. So for anyone that's been involved, or particularly those brigades that have been involved in supporting road crash rescue members to be part of that, well done. I don't think they're fired a shot, but it's more about the fact that we've got a lot of roads cut, a lot of people moving around on unstable surfaces. So well done to everybody involved in that. And perhaps more broadly, we acknowledge everybody that's on the front line and doing that wonderful work, but there's a lot of people behind the scenes organising all of that, and a shout out to everybody that's involved in that as well. So job well done.
Absolutely, and we saw that aerial insertion RCR crew during the 1920 bushfires. So quite a novel thing again, spearheaded by the CFA and the SES are combined to make that happen. As you said, the Shepparton rescue crew as well. Long weekend coming up. A lot of people moving across the state. So to know that should you have an accident in those flood ravaged areas, that crew will be there. To be able to tend to your needs and get you out of the car if needed. So thank you very much. Nicole, we spoke a lot about safety, and it would be remiss of me not to give you the microphone once more as our health and safety queen to talk about safety as we continue in this flood operation.
I think my parting words, Jason, would be that, putting the community at the centre of what we do is part of our DNA. But also thinking about that we really need to do the best that we possibly can to take care of ourselves so that we can continue to look after others and support others for the sustainability of that. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, and if people are a bit nervous about knowing what to do if they've never been involved in a flood operation before, there is something available to them in order to get a bit refreshed. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, if I look at my notes, Jason, I can. There is a training session on LMS called Maintaining Safety at Flood and
Storm Scenes.
I think Kylie is partway through through that. So by all means, jump on LMS, have a look at that, and learn some really important things along the way in terms of, as you say, if it's your sort of first time in terms of this sort of event, really important to have a look at that when you can.
Absolutely. So a lot of key messages tonight, particularly whether it be around health and safety, the value of peers, knowing that support is available to you if you need it, and as always, it is okay not to be okay. So the peers are there, the member wellbeing team is there, the services are available, and I might just add, it's not just about psychological services as well. It's legal assistance, it's financial assistance. There's a whole lot of packages available to our members and their family members.
Absolutely.
Not just them, their family members as well. By contacting that 1800 959 232 gets you access to all those support services. So if you are feeling a bit blue or a bit down at the moment, please reach out. The team will do everything they can to assist you. I'd like to thank, as always, those behind the camera, and a big shout out to Martin Anderson, Beth Ramshaw, Sally Pickering, Keith Pakenham, who is home tonight, who's pulled together all those videos and got that done. But of course, last but not least, he's my executive producer for the Volunteer Forum, Brad Thomas, who's there answering and putting in the comments in there for me. I know he gets very embarrassed when I say it, but the crew do a fantastic job of pulling this together every month. We didn't have a live audience tonight because of where we have done the forum here in the city, but I know it takes a lot of work to pull that together, and Brad and the team do a fantastic job. So thank you very much for all the things that you do. I would like to end tonight's forum, but however, to let everyone know, CFA members, community members all, our thoughts are with you. It is a trying time at the moment. Our community is going through a lot right now, and there are a lot of communities that are about to go through a lot as well, knowing that this flood situation is going to last for quite some time. So whilst there's focus on Echuca at the moment, it will flow downstream. And it's not just those populated centres. I'd like to also shout out to what are the bulk of probably a lot of our members, and that's our farming communities. There was supposed to be a bumper harvest this year, but when you fly around in helicopters, you can see that there are a lot of paddocks underwater and a lot of crops ruined. So a lot of people are going to be doing it tough over the next couple of months. So again, if you need that help, it is available to you. And please just know that our thoughts and feelings are with you every step of the way. So with that, thank you everyone for joining us tonight, and good night.